Hi there, Rayleigh Bacon here, and welcome to the Electroculture Foundation series. This is the space where we slow down, where we begin to see again, not just with our eyes, but with our hearts, our memory, our intuition. If you've ever felt something intelligent pulsing beneath the surface of the soil, you were right. This series explores the forgotten forces behind growth, magnetism, light, atmospheric charge, the hidden harmonics of the living Earth. Today's episode is called Electroculture Isn't Magic, it's Electrobiology. A fresh look at roots, leaves, and the bioelectric cosmos that they are intrinsically a part of. We're going to go deep now into the hidden electrical gradients in plants and why this matters for electroculture, why this matters for your antennas, your collectors, your designs, and how you implement electroculture successfully in your garden. You need this foundation. You need to understand what underpins the success of electroculture. And we're going to go right into this, right into the story of the magnificent oak. This is going to let us grasp what is happening all the time. Come with me on a journey. Have you ever wondered why some trees like the mighty oak can survive lightning strikes with barely a scar? It's not just their strength, it's their wiring, it's their ancient knowing. Strength alone doesn't explain their survival. You see, beneath the bark, beneath the visible form, there exists a hidden architecture, a living circuitry rich in minerals, charged with memory, humming with unseen electricity. The symbol of the oak, its magnificent branching fractaling pattern. The oak as the ultimate apex tree species in many, many parts of the northern hemisphere, from Europe to the west coast of Canada alike. Oak trees are truly magnificent. And if we go right into the historical foundation of storytelling and myth that underpin the oak itself, we'll see one meta pattern, one story arc that goes from the edges of Brittany and France all the way up to the Norse Vikings and down to the ancient Etruscans and Romans alike. The oak tree from the Druidic British Isles all the way even to Turkey has been revered as being sacred. This tree has been a conduit between earth and heaven, and within that there lies a lot of wisdom, a lot of foundational information that we can integrate with modern science to unlock true secrets into the efficacy of electroculture, atmospheric charge collection, and atmospheric antennas. You see, the oak tree is truly special. It's one of the few trees that can survive lightning strikes. And the symbolism of lightning and the oak is rather important. The universe is electric. There's exchanges of polarity happening all the time between the atmosphere and the earth, between individual stars that funnel charge through hydrogen from one star to another, to the neurons in our brain and the mycorrhizal fungi net that sits beneath the soil's surface. Electricity underpins all biological processes. And the oak tree, well, it might reveal something here that we've been missing. Let's go into a little bit of a story, one that is truly special. My daughter Tulsi loves Pegasus. Maybe that's why I do too, as I love her deeply. And we've done lots of coloring together of horses and unicorns. You know, that's that's neither here nor there. But Pegasus was Zeus's greatest companion. Zeus would probably never have admitted it. He was rather hedonistic. He loved to party. He loved sex. He probably didn't think of Pegasus very often, in fact, but he did call upon Pegasus for his help. You've probably recognized Zeus for yielding lightning, for holding lightning in his hand and charging that down onto the earth to smite any humans that he thought deserved the wrath of the gods. Pegasus would carry Zeus's lightning bolts. Pegasus would take his lightning bolts from one point to another. Zeus was lazy. He probably drank a lot, I must say. And Pegasus, he might have been mystical, he might have been special, but even he got tired. And when he would land down onto the earth and close his wings and rest for a moment, occasionally the lightning that he carried would come in contact with the soil. Water would start to emerge and rise to the surface. A bubbling spring would start to flow. And from that point where the lightning struck, the water became sacred. This is well documented within Greek mythology, that any place that a sacred well emerged from likely had come in contact with Pegasus. What does that mean? What is hidden between the electrical exchange of the atmosphere and water, its ability to rise out of the ground and heal living things from animals to humans alike? The fountain of youth, perhaps. And there's a lot there, and we will cover that in greater detail as we get into structured water. We're going to go into more depth of the work of Victor Schauberger, and this all interconnects. There's a lot to break down here. But if we're going to understand that, we need to first understand what it means when electricity from the atmosphere is grounding into the earth, that is, influencing the way water moves, not just in soil, but in plants alike. Because an oak tree, if it's able to withstand lightning, if it's able to channel lightning because of its unique composition, its incredible density of iron and potassium in its electrolyte fluid of lymph, oak trees contain the highest concentration of iron than any other tree. Iron is ferromagnetic. It aligns with the Earth's magnetic field constantly. It also is an incredible conductor of electricity and magnetism alike, which is marvelous because when we looked at magnetotropism and how leaves and shoots can start to orient with magnetic fields, well, the most sacred tree in all of Europe happens to be the tree most capable of aligning with the Earth's magnetic field and creating a unique fractal branching pattern that likely generates a unique magnetic flux that influences the surrounding life forms around it in ways we do not comprehend. You see, their towering structure, their intricate branching, their internal mineral density, all of this allows them to act not merely as bystanders to storms, but as participants in the atmospheric charge grounding down to the earth. But this isn't just about trees. This is something far deeper. Electricity from lightning to the water that bubbles out of the earth and the living structured water that bathes all of our cells is intrinsically alive. It's woven into every living system on earth, beneath our skin and bark alike. Now, in more precise scientific terms, this interaction between trees and lightning is governed by electrical conductivity. We spoke about iron, the ease at which the electrical charge can move through a material is heightened when that material is highly conductive, certain minerals that allow for a flow of electrons to occur, especially when it's integrated with dielectric properties, how a material resists or stores electric energy. Trees like the oak, they're saturated with these conductive minerals, and they create a low resistance pathway for electric currents. During lightning storms, the electric field in our atmosphere, it begins to intensify. At any given moment, our localized atmosphere, if you were to move 1 meter in height, can contain as much as 50 to 100 volts of energy per square meter. But in the case of a heightened electrical charge, such as a thunderstorm, well, that increases significantly. It can reach as high as not 100 volts per meter, but 10,000 volts per meter. That's 100 times greater, a tension so fierce that it seeks a bridge in which tall trees can start to conduct that energy effortlessly. And the oak tree, it becomes that living bridge. Now, here's the thing. I told you about oak trees and how sacred they are. I presume that sacredness goes far deeper than antiquity. It goes back to prehistory, to the rise of megalithic structures from henges and dolmens alike. It is the foundation to the reason humans constructed incredible technological devices, pyramids and mounds, and menhirs and standing stones. In my view, they all root back to ancient humans that were hunter-gatherers migrating over vast landscapes, revering like an avatar. They revered the greatest, most majestic living organisms on the planet. And that in some places there were trees that towered so greatly that they created a sense of wonder and awe and reverence, devotion, that they symbolized the connection between the masculine atmosphere, the sky gods, and the feminine earth below. They were a polarity exchange between heaven and earth, between man and woman, negative and positive. This is the symbolism of the tree, the ultimate symbol of the yin and the yang, the torus field that trees generate, as we can see and measure, just like that of our earth and its magnetic field that envelops us. Ancient people may not have understood trees in those terms, but they certainly understood that they represented something significant. And if you were moving from place to place, if you never settled in one location for very long, you would begin to start to notice patterns in the landscape. You would see that ecosystems would fluctuate in their vitality based on unseen geological forces beneath the earth, based on an exchange of electrical energy between the heavens, the cosmos, and the soil below. And in these places, there would be nodes of connection. There would be nexus points in which an apex tree species, such as an oak, would tower above, which would become so great in size that they would bow down before it as a god, a living bridge, a landmark, a place that people could connect to, that humans from prehistory all the way up until recent times documented cosmic forces. They documented the seasons. They understood the equinox, the solstice, and the point between, such as May 1st and that range in which seeds start to form in the northern hemisphere and life and vitality surges into the reproductive force that begets new life Ancient humans observed these patterns and they mapped the stars. They connected the tree with the heavens and the earth. This is important. This is foundational. And if you were a tribe formed of various clans, if you did not integrate with other human tribes, your gene pool would start to degrade. We know that if we breed with our cousins and we start to practice incest, it's even become something vulgar in our society, and it's based in the genetic preservation of our species. To be revolted at such things because of the ability for that to denature our genome, to create mutations that result in disease, degeneration, a loss of vitality. Ancient people likely understood this. And it would have been very difficult to ensure that your gene pool maintained its integrity over generations when you had small population densities and you moved together in units. But here's the thing. Humans always gathered at specific points. And at these locations, how would you know that you need to meet at a given location to celebrate and to drink and share food and, well, to exchange in sexual acts and maintain life? That would occur. That would occur in a place that everyone could recognize, a place where a tree would tower upon the landscape, a place that was a conduit, a nexus. Do you see where I'm going with this bridge? It's my view that this became an inception to what later became a connection to God. The oak tree, from culture to culture. This is why. Because the oak tree and its ability to be that conduit between heaven and earth, to have the greatest capacity to induce an electrical charge and withstand lightning strikes, that very force is what allowed it to grow so big, to become a beacon that people could recognize. And at certain moments in which stars aligned with unique symmetry and alignment and geometry, that exchange of electrical energy between the cosmos and the earth, it became stronger. And it still is this way. But the ancients knew it. They could feel it. They could observe it in ways that even we can, and we'll break that down in the future. However, it was that underpinned these locations. It's what brought forth the sacredness in a given location and likely resulted in the manifestation of very megalithic sites, from henges to pyramids to modern-day cathedrals. Alas, that is beyond what we can speak on today. We got to get down to the pragmatic application of this energy exchange so you can start building atmospheric charge collectors and antennas that actually work, because likely that's why you're listening. I need to remind you about last week's episode where we explored 3 mechanisms behind the power of electroculture. We looked at magnetotropism, where plants align with magnetic fields. We looked at electrotropism, where they grow toward electric charges. And we looked at structured water, which enhances this exchange of magnetic and electric forces that creates greater cellular vitality and, well, underpins life itself. Today, we dive deeper. We're going to uncover the foundation of these forces. We're going to look specifically at the anode and cathode polarity and the electrical gradients that make plants living circuits. This is essential for understanding the how behind electroculture, which will include some of the following concepts. We're going to go into how anodes and cathodes shape the flow of energy in plants and nature alike. We're going to look why plants are dynamic antennas that bridge earth and sky. We're going to look into the science of that, not just the story. We're going to go into the electrical gradients a little further with electrotropism and magnetotropism and structured water. We're going to integrate that quite fluidly into this system. And then we're going to look at simple steps that you can use to integrate these concepts through biomimicry with your electroculture devices like copper spirals or paramagnetic stones. And this is going to underpin why electroculture is truly grounded in science and not mysticism. Hey there, Rayleigh Bacon here. Just a quick moment. If you're enjoying this episode of the Electroculture Foundation series, I have a small favor to ask. Head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening and leave us a review. It really helps more people discover the show. It only takes a couple of minutes and it truly means the world to us. But here's the thing. I get it. For a lot of people, even that can feel like a big ass. I feel like a big ask. So whether your review is good, bad, or neutral, if you take a screenshot and post it in our Facebook group, Electroculture Beginners to Advanced, making sure to tag myself, Rayleigh Bacon, or David Wexler, we'll gift you a 2-month trial subscription to become an Electroculture Foundation Insider. It's our way of saying thank you for supporting this movement. Now let's get back to the show. Now imagine this. You're standing barefoot on the earth. The morning dew starts to kiss your skin, and above you, invisible yet immense, 1 billion volts of energy start to crackle between the ground and the sky. You realize in that moment that you are not separate. You are immersed in an electrical ocean. You can start to feel goosebumps as if your hair starts to rise upon your skin. You see your body, your heart, your very bones, they hum quietly as they tune themselves into the living currents of the earth. The exchange of this polarity. This is not poetry. This is physics. Between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere, that outermost portion of our atmosphere that holds the greatest amount of charge, that exchange is what scientists call the global electric circuit, a planetary scale system of electrical flow that connects the ground to the heavens. Under clear skies, there is a vertical voltage gradient, as we said before, that it's worth repeating, that roughly 100 to 300 volts per meter near the surface and gently falls with altitude. The Earth's skin, it holds a negative charge in the ionosphere that surrounds it. It wears a crown of positive charge, a corona of energy. Between them, a great electrical river flows constantly, and it's maintained by cosmic rays and thunderstorms and solar winds. And you, composed of minerals and structured water, just like that oak tree, you are intrinsically a part of this connection, a filament within this field, this global electric circuit. Studies like those of Pohl in 1981, which if you want to see any studies that I reference in this work, you can always go to the show notes and click that link to the written version, scroll right to the bottom, you'll find them. It shows that the shape of biological rhythms like our sleep patterns, plant growth, and even microbial activity in the soil are intrinsically connected to this electrical gradient, that we are trained in rhythms between the sun and the earth. The old idea of grounding or earthing, in which you start to walk barefoot upon the earth, this was once dismissed as just folk wisdom or maybe new age nonsense. Well, it's grounded, excuse the pun, it's grounded in modern science. When we touch down upon the earth, we connect to this exchange, to this pulse. But when we wear a substance such as plastic soles upon our feet that disconnect us from that connection, we sever the link. between us and the Earth, between us as an intermediary between the Earth and the atmosphere, the Sun and the Earth. I do think that this is actually quite fundamental in underpinning why we have accelerations of cancer and other degenerative diseases. It's one of the factors that is poorly understood and often not considered. But at its roots, at the fundamental of it all, any degeneration of our cells happens because of oxidization, in which one molecule inside of us starts to rob electrons from another, stripping electrons in an attempt to create equilibrium or balance. In chemistry, this is about filling in the outer valence shell, the outer orbital, in which electrons flow around molecules and elements alike. In our bodies, when this occurs, this robbing of electrons, it causes degradation of our DNA, particularly our mitochondrial DNA, which we'll cover in later segments. It results in mutations that ultimately lead to degradation and cancer. But here's the thing. If grounding is allowing for an exchange of information between the Earth and the atmosphere, then what would likely happen is the Earth's negative charge, its surplus of electrons, would start to rise up through our feet and into our bodies, seeking to unite with the positively charged protons of the atmosphere. But if oxidative stress or free radical damage in our bodies is underpinned by an insufficient amount of balanced electrons on molecules and elements alike, then could we actually donate electrons by connecting with the Earth, and in doing so stabilize somewhat this entropic process that underpins nature? Certainly we could slow it down. So this is important. We need to understand that the exchange here of energy isn't just about longevity. It's about being intrinsically connected with the Earth and the universe alike. Plants do it very well because their roots, they penetrate down into the moisture-rich soil below, full of electrolytes, allowing for electrical charge to flow, allowing for electrons to move in the soil matrix. They're more able to tap into this electron potential and to use that for various biological processes. But underpinning this, I really want to emphasize that you are not an isolated island. You are a spark in the Earth's living circuit. When you touch a leaf, when you walk among trees, when you kneel in your garden soil, you are not merely brushing against the surface of things. You are entering into electrical, energetic communication. Each touch, each breath, each glance is a tiny yet exquisite exchange of electrons, shaping and being shaped, an interaction that is molding the way in which you exist on this planet. In technical terms, this dynamic relationship arises from the surface charge transfer, the movement of these electrical charges across the surface, this electrostatic induction, the rearrangement of charges due to nearby electric fields, and, well, something else that's truly amazing. A bio-photon exchange, the emission and reception of ultra-weak light signals from living cells, which I think is underpinned by this electrical exchange. Within every living cell, there are these emissions of ultra-low frequency light that pulses outwards, that can be measured with scientific tools now that show us within the wavelength of UV light. These biophotons are light pulsations like the aura of living things, perhaps. And the ability for this charge to be emitted can actually be amplified by the conscious will of a human seeking to heal another through touch. This is well documented. It's measured. It's not just woo when you think of a Reiki practitioner being able to flow energy through their hands. It's something that is measured through biophotonic emissions. And all living things emit this right from their mitochondria, the innermost portion of their cells that have these DNA that forms in ring patterns, not in double helix strands that we're so familiar with, but in a circular ring that pulses and emits light. It's my view that these pulsations are intrinsically connected to an interplay between these forces that are flowing through the conduit of living things, completely and utterly dependent on structured water and the matrix that connects us to heaven and earth, that allows us to pulse with light and to exchange information. So, leaves of plants, they're alive with this charge, and we can see that in these emissions of biophotons. Their waxy skin, known as the cuticle, they hold a delicate surface potential. Long before you make contact with your touch, the tiny electric fields of your hands and the plant, they begin to exchange and dance together, weaving subtle currents between them. And plants like you are radiant. These biophotons that you emit through your hands and through your eyes, and through individual cells as they communicate with each other. Scientific studies are also starting to suggest that when humans approach living plants, a gentle coupling occurs. An electromagnetic field begins to interact and photons of light start to exchange. A biological rhythm and an entrainment occurs. This is a coherence, a syncing of living systems across the thresholds of skin and leaf, breath and light. Thus, when you tend your garden, when you wander beneath ancient trees in a forest, or simply sit among wild growing things, you are not merely relaxing. You are entering into a dialogue with the living fabric of nature itself. You are remembered by the earth. And if you allow yourself to, you can begin to remember her and how you are truly connected with all things. Part of the Electroculture Foundation series is pragmatic. A lot of what I provide here in this podcast series is storytelling based. It's going into these concepts through the use of storytelling, of metaphor, of myth, of poetry. I'm trying to blend as best I can mysticism with science. I know that many of you are not interested in mystical things. You want hard facts. You want to see things through a scientific lens. But the same holds true within our Electroculture Beginners to Advanced Facebook community, which is well over 250,000 members strong. There are a lot of people who want science, but there are a lot of people who see the world only through a lens of spirit, of terminology that is mystical, that doesn't have scientific merit, that doesn't have a concrete foundation in science. I want to speak to the mind and the heart alike, and I know it can be frustrating for some of you, and I'm sorry for that, but this is the way that this series is going to be presented, and we're going to go into pragmatic things. We're going to go into how to build antennas, how to utilize them effectively, how to use pyramid for charging seeds, and all of those things that many of you want to understand intimately. But in order to grasp those things, we need these foundations first. So let's go into a bit of some of the science now. We're going to look into Electricity 101. What are anodes and cathodes? The cathode is the point where electrons flow into a system. It's like a river's source, a spring, whereas an anode is the point where electrons flow out, like a river delta where it reaches the ocean. But here's a twist. These labels, they don't always match nicely with positive and negative. What matters is the direction of electron flow, which can change depending on the system. Whether it's a battery, a storm, or a living organism, this flow of electrons, ions, and charge is fundamental to how energy moves through the world. You see, plants are not just passive life forms, they're living electrical systems. The earth, it holds this positive charge, while plants in contact with soil develop a net negative charge, making them natural conductors in the atmospheric electrical field. The surface of the earth tends to be a net negative charge, meaning it has more electrons than protons. Roots are more electrically grounded. They're close to the Earth's potential. So they are the river's source, the point where electrons flow in. They're the cathode. If we look at it through this use of cathode and anode terminology. From the soil, they then often use membrane pumps and ion channels to actually bring in electrical charge and bring in nutrients. The leaves and the flowers, so the shoots and the flowering bodies of plants, being higher and exposed more upwards, they tend to accumulate this negative electrostatic charge that's coming from the surface of the earth. And this charge, it then starts to interact with the air, with light, and with pollinators in very curious ways. You remember earlier when I spoke about how biophotons emit UV light and can be measurably observed with new scientific instruments. The same is true for the pollen of plants. They emit a emission of light that can be seen by pollinating insects within the UV light spectrum. So I do think there's a connection to electricity here, but I digress. If we look at plants as electrical circuits, then we start to see that this charge tends to flow upwards from the root to the tips, seeking to unite with the positively charged atmosphere. The base of the plant, it behaves more like the cathode that's then receiving electrons. The tips, they act more like the anode, where electrons are then released or at least interact with the surrounding environment. This is likely why trees are emitting negative ions into the air. They're creating this charge potential. So this polarity, it creates an electrical gradient, a living circuit within the plant itself. Now, there's a researcher, A.G. Volkoff, in the show notes. He explains in Plant Electrophysiology, published in a scientific journal in 2006, that these electrochemical gradients, they power the transport of ions within the cells of plants. They underpin the flow of fluids, of water, nutrient, and they do this in response to environmental stimuli, and they function like a biological battery. The roots rich in this negative charge, they drive the processes such as the lymph starting to flow upwards and to bring nourishment to the upper portions of the canopy, and helps to control the loss of water and the right exchange of nutrients. The leaves with the lower negative charge, they complete the circuit as that charge starts to flow upwards and then eventually accumulates in bursts of electrostatic charge, greater negative charge potential. And that's happening with the positively charged atmosphere, an exchange of energy. This gradient is dynamic, it's not static. We can't look at it in simple terms, but fundamentally, these plants are transmitting action potentials, these rapid electrical signals and variation potentials, which help to slow the signals. It's rhythmic. It's occurring through their tissues as they respond to stimuli like touch and light or stress. Other researchers like Salvalo and Senna in 2024, more recently, they demonstrated that these signals, they coordinate growth, they coordinate defense and communication, similar to the nervous system, with roots exhibiting this habituation and exchange in response to electrical fields. This gradient enabled electrotropism, where roots then start to curve toward these more negatively charged zones in the soil, these cathode areas. This is where you have a greater amount of cations, positively charged minerals in the soil. This is an oversimplification, of course, but this gives a new light to those of you who understand horticulture sciences. It gives a new light to the cation exchange of living plants in the soil matrix. So water is central to this system as well, and particularly structured water because of its ability to be a greater conductor of electrical charge. In the xylem of plants, the water starts to act as an electrolyte, so it enhances the conductivity and the transportation of nutrients within this gradient. The structured water, with its organized molecular structure, it increases this efficiency. It enables each drop of water to support the plant's electric flow. This circuitry governs critical functions, not just hydration efficiency, but nutrient absorption and the resilience that plants have during times of drought or disease. So this is what makes plants in a vertical system, makes their circuitry so important when understanding plant resiliency. And it underpins why electroculture, when properly utilized, is increasing plants' ability to become resilient in a system. So in nature, these exchanges have been designed perfectly. With electroculture, we're trying to mimic this exchange through certain devices. And now there are many technologies that fit under the umbrella of electroculture. The atmospheric antenna is really the gateway. It's the most simple way of understanding this exchange of electrical energy. So if we look at a towering oak or a delicate unfurling of a fern or the humble blade of grass, each one of these is channeling energy, not by accident, but by an exquisite design. They're bodies of branching fractal patterns that reach and spiral. It mirrors this invisible pathway along with which electrical and energetic information is exchanged between the earth and the sky. So the tree's canopy, its fractal branches, it functions like a capacitor, collecting airborne ions and modifying local electrical fields. Research in atmospheric science indicates that forests, especially those with conductive species like oak or beech, begin to enhance these fields, influencing processes from pollination to microbial activity in the soil. The roots that anchor deep into the negatively charged soil and the stems and leaves that stretch towards the positively charged atmosphere, they're conduits between these forces. In principles of electromagnetism and electrostatics, these forces that govern electrical charge and fields across space, This is really what underpins the science of the electrophysiology of plants, the electrobiology of plants, and why it matters for electroculture. I'm repeating this a lot here, and for some this can be a bit annoying, but the truth is this is foundational. If you can grasp this, you can start to understand the science behind atmospheric charge collection and using atmospheric collectors and aerial antennas to stimulate plant growth. So, as we will discuss in more detail next week, more studies are starting to show that tree canopies can subtly modify local electric fields. They can thicken the unseen atmosphere with living charge. They can emit ions into the air. And then through their interplay with the underground fungal filaments, mycorrhiza fungi that stretch like a living circuitry beneath the soil, trees can start to exchange energy horizontally, interspecies, and this is all underpinned by electricity. And this is foundational in understanding the living food web in the soil and the electrical nutrient exchange that is happening all the time. This is like a true bioelectric internet that pulses beneath our feet. So the underground roots that integrate with the soil's charged matrix, they connect to this mycorrhizal fungal net that extend the circuit and begin to share not just nutrients but electrical signals. So this is a preview that we'll explore in the future here. So when we build our electroculture devices, the goal is not to impose a foreign system, it's to amplify an existing exchange, to align with the living architecture that's already humming through the land. Copper spirals, paramagnetic stones, atmospheric antennas, they are most powerful when they mirror the sacred geometries of life itself. When they align with nature's design, these results start to compound. When we overwrite these forces with our ignorance or our hubris, we create degradation or decay. We're actually reducing the natural flow of energy and can cause harm. So by understanding this, this is what will underpin success as we move forward. Every living being, every patch of soil, every grove of trees holds its own symphony of resonant frequencies. Now the art here is to begin listening. For instance, a copper spiral shaped to resemble the twisting pattern of a vine. If we were to bury that accurately with the right form, we can start to tap into Schumann resonance frequencies, long and rhythmically. We can utilize certain frequencies, not just the Schumann resonance, but higher Hertz frequencies for various purposes to support the electrotropism of plants. Paramagnetic stones, when they're strategically placed around a garden, they can help align geomagnetic fields and enhance the magnetotropism that plants depend on and stimulate soil microbes as well. So this properly utilized techniques, from grounding rods to electrodes, they can help stabilize the soil's exchange of charge and help to support the structuring of water within the soil column itself, which then aids the exchange of ions that we spoke on. See, this is the interconnection of all of these forces that I'm trying to underpin here. And when we design atmospheric antennas that mimic the effect of a tree's canopy to collect atmospheric charge to energize your garden, we can do so in a way that doesn't cast unwanted shade upon our food crops. So I'm sure at this point that you understand that the most foundational electroculture techniques utilizing atmospheric charge collection or atmospheric antennas to stimulate plant growth is underpinned on this exchange that plants are having all the time between the atmosphere and the earth. And that in order to execute on these techniques, you needed this foundation, but you probably still wonder, how do I actually build my antenna so that it's able to achieve this outcome? That's coming up when we look at this in more detail after the break. Everything's linked in the show notes. To get access to that and to unlock the full Electroculture Foundation series, head over to electroculture.substack.com/s/foundations. It's less than $5 a month with full-length episodes every Wednesday. Become an early pioneer of a growing movement and help support your favorite show, Electroculture and Beyond, as you discover how to build, at least here after the break, your very first functional atmospheric antenna based on these principles that we outlined here. That's a wrap for this free edition of the Foundation series. If you're a Foundation insider, stick around. There's more coming up after the break. And for everyone else, we'll catch you next week.